The talk of the ACC heading into 2021 seems to be, again, North Carolina. And if Mack Brown's club is the best team in the Coastal Division and possibly ready to challenge Clemson, we got Ross Martin on the line from Inside Carolina on 247 Sports. Ross, how you doing today?
I'm great, Mark. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, appreciate you stopping by to talk Mack Brown's team that just concluded spring practices with the annual spring game on Saturday. Broadcasted, I saw the whole deal. The first indication I get of anything in regards to Carolina is, of course, the face of the franchise and Sam Howell. Thoughts about his leadership, and Mack Brown outlined where he thinks he's taken steps as being just not. You would think that the analysis would be okay, be a better leader, be a better decision maker on the field, those sorts of things. But even physically, that he's taking strides to be better, stronger, more physically capable, more flexible, faster, all those things as well.
Yeah, I mean, from a football standpoint, there's definitely fine tuning on certain aspects of his game, but little things that you probably won't even notice. I mean, a little bit more mobility, you said, and kind of working with his hips and maybe losing a little bit of weight to become a little bit more mobile, but that wasn't like a huge issue either. And then fine tuning his decision making, I think, is one area, preventing sacks, knowing when to take the easy play versus when to maybe throw the ball out of bounds, or when to check down, and then when to go for the big play, kind of that kind of decision making. And they've really worked on kind of reading different defenses. They've even moved to NFL defenses over the offseason. Offensive coordinator Phil Longo worked with him on every defense that different NFL teams run. So he's hoping that when you go against the best, you see what NFL defenses do, you'll be able to handle what college defenses do as well. So there's some areas that he's really worked on and improved. And then leadership, as you mentioned, becoming a team leader. He spoke to the team after certain practices, along with linebacker Jeremiah Gamel. So being that leader, taking on the weight of being the Heisman candidate, the face of the program, all those things he's certainly working on and focusing on. But he's a cool customer, and I don't think any of that pressure will really affect him. He does have to replace him in the offense, has to replace a lot of production. Thursday and Friday's NFL draft, UNC should have a couple players go in the first couple rounds with both running backs, Michael Carter and Javonte Williams, and both top receivers, Daz Newsome and Diami Brown. So that's been a huge focus, kind of replacing the running back production and finding some more wide receivers, some playmakers, because you're only as good as the wide receivers you have to get the ball to. So that'll be interesting storylines to follow entering the offseason.
Yeah, despite Ty Chandler's productivity at Tennessee, 3,300 total yards there, it doesn't appear as though anybody seems capable of filling in the type of shoes that Carter and Williams leave. A lot of guys not necessarily highly recruited coming out of high school, with Josh Henderson, Elijah Green, Caleb Hood. So are they just going to distribute these carries all over the place? Do we expect maybe a 3-man rotation?
Yeah, I would expect 3-man running back by committee. Ty Chandler is kind of the front runner, we think. It's really hard to kind of discriminate or differentiate between these running backs just watching a couple scrimmages and the spring game last Saturday. But Ty Chandler, probably the front runner just based on experience, productivity, having been in, kind of been there with all the SEC competition he faced at Tennessee. Yeah, and then behind him, it could be Josh Henderson, who's a junior, who looked pretty good the spring game. Could be DJ Jones, a sophomore who didn't really see much time last year. Caleb Hood's a true freshman, but he's transitioning from the quarterback position. There's a lot of names. Elijah Green's another one. British Brooks, a lot of names. And so they'll come up with 3. Those will be the rotation. We think that Ty Chandler is going to be one of those 3, and the other 2 kind of yet to be determined. So a competition that it raged in the spring will continue until training camp. There's a lot of time between now and then for Caleb Hood to catch up, for example, for a player to put on weight, that type of stuff. So some definitely things can change. That'd be big. I mean, a running game can truly help the quarterback and help the offense a lot. And we saw that last year with UNC. So important they get some sort of production out of that group. It won't match what Michael Carter and Javonte Williams did. That's a once in a 15-year type running back duo.
Talking up the heels, we got Ross Martin on the line from Inside Carolina 247 Sports. Of course, you know the brand. Head on over there for the latest on the heels. At wide receiver, it seems to be the same type of deal with the two guys leaving. Bo Corrales comes back as a familiar face from 2 years ago. Missed a ton of time last year. But Josh Downs, Antoine Green, Emery Simmons, do we expect any of those guys to be a true number one guy?
Josh Downs is definitely number one. He's the one name we heard. He had a huge Orange Bowl game against Texas A&M. Kind of broke out playing behind Daz Newsome. With Daz Newsome out, Josh Downs stepped in. When we had heard about him as a recruit, about being almost elite in terms of what he could do and how polished he was as a receiver, he'll be the number one receiver at the slot spot. He had some offseason surgery recently that we saw on Instagram, so hopefully that kind of turns out okay for him. But he's number one guy. And yeah, behind him, it's kind of the same thing. You mentioned Bo Corrales. He was hurt all last season and then into the spring. So hopefully he recovers and he'll be a valuable guy. Not a massive playmaker, but a reliable receiver and a veteran presence. Got tight end Garrett Walston will definitely be a impact in the play in the pass game. And then Antoine Green, waiting for him to break out. Seems like he could be the third guy. Emery Simmons is another one. So of that group, and then Chaffrey Brown, Dami's brother, he missed most of spring with an injury he suffered during a scrimmage. I imagine he would be the major deep threat alongside Antoine Green and Josh Downs. So watch for those names: Chaffrey Brown, Emery Simmons was good last year, Antoine Green, Bo Corrales. So you definitely have names. You have guys that can play, who have played, who Sam likes. It's a matter of kind of who steps up. Because again, it's gonna be harder to place Dami Brown. I think Josh will be able to place Daz Newsome, but replacing Dami Brown, who led the nation in catches over 20 yards for almost 2 straight years, that's gonna be hard to replace as well. So those are the big names to look for.
Please like the video, share the videos out on social media, because if you enjoy the content, others will as well, and subscribe right here. We got Ross Martin on the line from 247 Sports Inside Carolina. Before we move to the defense, and a bold statement made that I'm going to throw at you that was made during the spring game, can't forget the offensive line. It was stated during the spring game that not only are 5 starters back, but they're comfortable with going 9 deep. Like they have no issue with 1 through 9 being on the field in an ACC game.
To offensive line, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they think they have the depth they didn't have last year. They were missing 2 players in the spring game: Brian Anderson, the starting center, and Joshua Zudu was out all spring with an injury at guard. He's one of their best offensive linemen. So they were able to build depth because of that. They think they kind of got William Barnes, a former top 50 recruit, in his 4th year, good to go as a backup guard/tackle. They have all the starters back, like you mentioned, and then behind them, they have a walk-on that's kind of progressed to a point where he can be play starters minutes and definitely get some reps as a backup center. And they feel good about some younger guards and tackles. So they think they have the 8 or 9, hopefully get to 9 or 10. That's the goal. So more depth, which just helps for injuries. They haven't had that since Mack Brown's been back last 2 seasons. So they're building towards that. They didn't lose anybody in the offensive line. I think the last 2, just 1 year, last year, everyone returned. There were no seniors on the roster last year. So that's good. I mean, that continuity is huge. You know how important chemistry is, communication. It's the one spot where continuity, they work together so much in terms of how they operate. So that's huge. And that should be a huge benefit for the run game and for protecting Sam. So where they did lose some with Diami, Daz, Michael Carter, Javonte Williams, kind of made up for it by returning Sam and returning the entire offensive line and adding some depth. So they're going to get better there, you have to think.
The defense was pretty atrocious at times last year. I'm not going to say across the board, but at times was pretty atrocious. Of course, they lose the leader in Chaz Surratt. We'll see where he gets drafted in the latter portion of the week here. Jeremiah Gamel made a comment, Ross, during the spring game, that he thinks that this unit is going to be the best in the ACC, and by the end of the season, he wants to have the best defense in the country, thinks that they can achieve that goal.
Yeah, I'm not sure I heard that, but I believe you. I can see them being very, very good. They have all the pieces now. There's no more excuses for lack of depth because they have the bodies of defensive line. That's the key. They're going to be able to play 3 down, big down linemen up front. They weren't able to do that last year. They relied more on kind of two down linemen and then kind of two bigger defensive ends. They're going to be able to play like three defensive tackles, which is what you need for the 3-4 linemen. They got that with everyone returning, I think. Raymond Vohasek, Tamari Fox out this spring, but we'll be back for the fall. And then you have names that played some last year. Miles Murphy was kind of a big standout from the spring. A guy like Clyde Pender could be a player. Kevin Hester, just rattling off these names that no one's really heard of, but they've been waiting in the wings, kind of developing, and now are sophomores, redshirt sophomores, juniors ready to go. So defensive line should be vastly improved with definitely some playmakers there with Murphy, Vohasek, Tamari Fox. Depth, go through. I mean, they have Jeremiah Gimbel back as well. I mean, he's the linebacker. He's the quarterback of the defense, and he can rack up tackles. So they feel good about depth at every position. We can get into more on that, but I don't know if they're going to be the best comparing to the Clemson and other teams like that. But they're going to be vastly improved, and the success of UNC this season will be based around how improved the defense is and how good they are, how many turnovers they can force, and how many points they can limit teams to. So that's because I think the offense will be either status quo, the same, maybe a little better, but could be a little bit worse in terms of productivity. But the defense is going to be, I think, a lot better than last season. So that's where the difference in this team is going to be. It's going to fall on the defense to take steps compared to last season. Hopefully, there's not going to be any like 40 to 45 type games this year. You would think the offense could put up those numbers, but the defense has gotten to a point where I think they can make some plays and limit some of these teams they struggled with in the past.
I didn't mean to bypass the backup quarterback situation behind Sam Howell. Of course, nobody wants to see those guys on the field during meaningful time because Sam Howell needs to be upright the entire season. But Jacoby Crisell's the guy that's got more experience. But I thought Drake May was pretty impressive out there. He needs to fill in as a freshman in regards to weight and conditioning and that sort of thing, fill out the frame. But man, he was mighty impressive making throws and making plays with his feet out there.
Yeah, I think Drake will be great. I mean, he's a highly recruited guy, borderline 5-star player. That competition's going to be interesting to watch because the goal for Drake this spring was kind of just learn the offense, get his feet wet. Wasn't really competing. It wasn't really competition yet. That'll happen in the fall for the backup quarterback position and kind of all through the fall leading into 2022. So the guy who wins that competition between Jacoby Criswell and Drake May will be the you would think would be expected starter, or at least have a leg up heading into spring 2022. And of course, if they might get a chance to play a lot if UNC is able to blow out some teams early on in the season. I think Criswell, they like Criswell. He can spin it. He didn't throw it as much in the spring games, but you get to see as much of what he can do. Seems like a guy that likes to tuck it and run it after his first or second options are gone. And then Drake did look comfortable. He is very skinny. I think that stood out. Needs to add some weight, but very athletic. Comes from a very, very athletic family. There's no doubt there. His brother, a national champion at UNC on the basketball court. So, Criswell, Drake May is one of the intriguing storylines that hopefully we don't have to worry about until 2022. But for the backup spot, certainly a periphery issue of concern heading into the preseason 2021 preseason, but we'll have an eye on that for sure.
Ross Martin joins us from Inside Carolina 247 Sports here at the Voice of College Football. Break it down the Heels, who we don't want to hear any more news in regards to, because it's typically this time of year after spring practice leading into August camp, guys are getting in trouble or they're injured. So no news would be a good thing, although I think this year is going to be completely different in regards to that transfer portal starting to churn. And, of course, the dead period running through May 31st, guys are going to be getting on campus in June and starting to make some commitments.
Yeah, talk for hours about the transfer portal and its impact on the college football landscape. Mac Brown has been told us multiple times they expect people to transfer, a couple people to transfer this spring after spring practice once they go through the depth chart. So we got one of those on Monday with backup linebacker Kadri Jackson. If there's a junior or redshirt sophomore or maybe a senior who has one more year of eligibility or a couple more years of eligibility and is, maybe third on the depth chart at some position, I don't fault them for wanting to leave, but it does hurt the depth. Kadri Jackson was a backup linebacker. I mean, he was one snap away from being a starter, I believe, unless something's changed on the depth chart. But he wanted to play. He knew he was not. He was not. He knew he was not going to be a starter, I imagine, and wants to go and play somewhere. So you can see that across the board. We'll expect a couple more this spring from UNC. Don't know when. And then, sometimes it's hard to add players because you don't have the scholarship numbers. You can't just, so it's a weird thing with the initial counters. You don't even understand. You can only bring in a certain amount of players per cycle, per year. So even though if people leave, you can have people replace them. I think that's kind of how it works. So it's the landscape of college football. But I think people at UNC are very happy in general. People don't go there just for football. It's a great school. A lot of players from the state of North Carolina. So it certainly is what they're doing and building towards, trying to get to the college football playoff and trying to win ACC titles. I think a lot of people bought in. Most of the team has bought into that kind of journey and Mack Brown's leadership. So it's not like Tennessee where you had, double-digit people leaving and double-digit people coming in. Not to take a shot at Tennessee, but
they don't need anybody else taking shots at them.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's an easy target. I don't think you'll see too many at UNC leaving, and I don't think you'll see too many coming in because Mack has said he doesn't want to kind of live by the transfer portal. He wants to kind of build through recruiting classes. But they did add Ty Chandler. They did add a couple pieces. They will add a couple pieces when they need to. They want to get starters, and the only way the transfer portal hurts them is just depth, which can be big. If you see Alabama, their depth is key because they keep bringing in these 5-stars, and by the time they're juniors and seniors, they have experienced starters, and that's what UNC is trying to get to by building depth. But if you lose pieces, it's hard to kind of develop that depth.
Ross, for you guys that cover this team on a regular basis and hear from the coaching staff and the players, again, on a regular basis, this may not be real new or refreshing to you, but to put together Gemmel's comments at the spring game with Mack Brown's, I think it gives everybody nationally a real perspective on where this program is. Gemmel told a story about his speech to the locker room after the Orange Bowl, where he pretty much balanced it out between, we were missing a ton of guys. Nobody gave us a chance in this game. We went out and took Texas A&M, one of the top 5 teams in the country, down to the wire. So understand and feel good about that, but we're not going to tolerate losing. This is not going to be acceptable. We expect to win big games. And then Mack Brown, and I'll let you speak to that before I move on to Mack Brown.
Yeah, I mean, after the Orange Bowl, it felt like it was spun it so much that it was the most positive post game after a double-digit loss I've ever been a part of. Because they just knew kind of what they had, and they knew that they did take. The score doesn't really replicate what or represent what that game really was. It was a pretty close game to the end. I mean, I think they had a garbage touchdown at the end. So I think Mack Brown kind of knew. He knows how good this team can be. He knows that they fought to the end without their 4 best offensive players outside of Sam Howell. And so it was like a stepping stone to next season, and that's kind of how he spun it in the post game. A loss is a loss, but it was a big time morale win in terms of building towards next year because they did play really well. They did show up, and a lot of young guys played really well. So yeah, I think what you're going to say is probably Mack had the same kind of perspective about heading into next season.
Yeah, those were actually, those were comments that Gemmel made, he said to the locker room. And then Mack Brown, just listening to him, it seems to be this just perfect mix of we're loose, we have fun. To your point about the transfer portal, we're very upfront with the players. We're very open and honest with them. He said, we're going to sit down with every player following spring practice to let them know where they stand so they can make an informed decision. They're very open about the NFL draft. Hey, if it's best for you, that's what we want is for you to earn a living. That's why you're in college to figure those things out. So it seems like this very fun, open atmosphere. They want to have fun. They play loose. There's a lot of smiles on the field, on the practice field, but at the same time, hey, we're out here to improve this. They're obviously working hard because he's improved this program by leaps and bounds, and we want to win a championship. It just seems like they're building this kind of culture that, to use Clemson as an example, kind of a new age, new era kind of college football culture.
Yeah, it's been incredible to watch how Mack Brown has transformed the culture People are excited about Carolina football, and they're excited about what they have, and when it helps when you win and you recruit well and you kind of see the progression on the field. They've gotten better every season. I think 7 wins. First year 7-6, 8-4 last year with a shortened season. I guess they were short 1 game. And this year, they're going for 10-11. I mean, they could potentially go 11-1, I think, maybe 10-2 this season. If they play there, they should be favored, I think, in every game but one. If you drew the lines right now, I think so. You're seeing the results of that culture, of that recruiting, of the coaching. So that pays off, and if you want to be a part of it, so it helps kind of builds on each other there. And Mac's super open, like you said. I think it's the way to do it. He is 69 years old, but it doesn't seem that he has the most energy of, they say he has, unlimited energy when it comes to recruiting, when it comes to coaching and handling his staff. He's very honest, very open with us, great with the media. I mean, it's pretty nice here in blue heaven, as we call it here in Chapel Hill. I jokingly say that, but that's what a lot of people call it. So things are up, and we'll see what happens. It's a big year. I mean, it's the big year. If they came out, they play Virginia Tech to open the season. If they were to lose that game, it'd be all right. What do we have here now? Because so every game weighs a lot in the ACC. But I think UNC will be right there at the end with one of the best teams in the Coastal, the chance to go to the conference championship game against Clemson and Charlotte.
Powder blue heaven. With that, we'll let you go, Ross. Inside Carolina 247 Sports. Check out Ross's work right there. We appreciate you stopping by as always.
All right. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.